1972 at RCA Studios, Elvis Presley held a historic recording session. Normally working with a large entourage, Elvis entered the studio that special night with only 3 people, his pianist, bass guitarist, and vocalists. The producers stood frozen in shock as Elvis began singing hymns they had never heard before. At the end of the session, Elvis said, "When we release this album, people will understand how close God is to us." But the album was never released. Colonel Parker shut down the project, and no one knew where the recordings were, until 2023, when secret notes and a key found in Elvis's private Bible, locked away for 45 years, pointed to the location of the master tapes hidden deep within Graceland. The soft glow of candles illuminated the small wood-paneled room at the back of Graceland. It was past midnight on February 3, 1972, and Elvis Presley sat alone in what he called his meditation room, a private chapel of sorts that few people even knew existed within the famous mansion. Open on his lap was a well-worn leather Bible, its pages filled with handwritten notes, highlighted passages, and small paper markers. Elvis ran his fingers over a passage from the Book of Psalms he had underlined years earlier. "Make a joyful noise unto the Lord, all the earth, make a loud noise and rejoice and sing praise." He closed the Bible, a look of determination crossing his face. He had made his decision. It was time to create the album he had been contemplating for years, a collection of gospel songs unlike anything he had ever recorded, music that would express the depths of his faith and spiritual journey. What happened over the next several months would become one of the most mysterious chapters in Elvis Presley's musical legacy, the creation and subsequent disappearance of what Elvis himself called the most important work of my life. A gospel album so personal, so spiritually raw, that his manager Colonel Tom Parker would deem it too risky to release, leading to its suppression and eventual disappearance for over 4 decades. The story of this lost album remained buried until 2023, when renovations at Graceland led to the discovery of Elvis's private Bible, locked away since his death in 1977. Within its pages were detailed notes about the album, recording sessions, and most surprisingly, a small key taped to the inside back cover with a cryptic note: "The true sound of my soul is safely kept where only God can hear it." EP. To understand the significance of this lost gospel album, we must first understand Elvis's deep and complex relationship with faith and spirituality, a relationship that began in his childhood and remained central to his identity throughout his life, even as his public persona projected something quite different. Elvis Aaron Presley was born in Tupelo, Mississippi, in 1935 and raised in the Assembly of God Church, a Pentecostal denomination known for its emotionally expressive worship, belief in spiritual gifts, and gospel music. From an early age, Elvis was immersed in the sounds of Southern gospel, witnessing the power of music to create transcendent spiritual experiences. Gospel was the purest part of Elvis's musical heritage, explained Ernst Jorgensen, a music historian and producer who has overseen the release of Elvis's catalog for decades. Before rock and roll, before Hollywood, there was gospel. It was the foundation of his musical identity. Throughout his career, Elvis recorded several gospel albums, including his Hand in Mine 1960, How Great Thou Art 1967, and He Touched Me 1972. These recordings won him Grammy Awards and showcased his love for spiritual music. But according to the newly discovered Bible notes, there was another gospel project, one far more personal and experimental than anything the public had heard. February 8, 1972, met with Red West and Charlie Hodge about the Midnight Sessions, reads one of Elvis's handwritten entries. "No RCA producers, no Colonel, just us and the Spirit. We'll use Studio B when everyone else has gone home. Larry Geller is helping me select readings between songs." Larry Geller was Elvis's spiritual advisor and personal hairstylist, who had introduced Elvis to various metaphysical and spiritual texts beyond his Christian upbringing. The relationship between the two men often frustrated Colonel Parker, who felt Geller encouraged Elvis to explore spiritual ideas that didn't align with his marketable image. Another entry, dated March 15, 1972, reveals more. Third night of recording for the Higher project. Something happened in the studio tonight I can't explain. While singing Closer to the Eternal, I felt like someone else was singing through me. The boys felt it too. The engineer says he saw a blue light around the microphone on the playback video. We're capturing something special here. The album, apparently titled Higher, was taking shape as something far beyond a conventional gospel record. According to the Bible notes, it combined traditional hymns, new compositions written by Elvis himself, and spoken word passages from not only the Bible, but also Buddhist texts, Khalil Gibran's The Prophet, and various metaphysical works that Elvis had studied with Geller. David Briggs, a Nashville piano player who worked with Elvis during this period and was interviewed following the Bible's discovery, confirmed the existence of these sessions. Those late-night gospel recordings were unlike anything I've ever been part of, Briggs recalled. Elvis was in a zone, spiritually connected in a way that was almost eerie. He wasn't performing, he was channeling something. He'd close his eyes and sing these songs that seemed to come from somewhere else. Some were familiar hymns but reimagined in ways I'd never heard. Others were completely new. According to Briggs, the sessions took place over 7 nights in March and April of 1972, all after midnight when the regular studio staff had gone home. Elvis insisted on minimal equipment, preferring the natural acoustics and imperfections of a more stripped-down recording approach. He kept saying he didn't want it to sound professional, he wanted it to sound real, Briggs said. There were moments when his voice would do things I didn't think were humanly possible, these incredible sustained notes that gave us all goosebumps. A couple of times the engineers checked to make sure there wasn't some technical explanation for what we were hearing. Another musician present for some of the sessions, bass player Norbert Putnam, shared a similar account. Elvis recorded an incredible version of a song called Sanctified Woman that he said came to him in a dream. I remember him telling us before we started that he'd seen his mother Gladys, who had died in 1958 while he was sleeping, and she was singing this melody. We laid it down in one take, and there wasn't a dry eye in the studio. The notes in the Bible describe the album's structure, 12 songs interspersed with spoken passages, beginning with what Elvis called Approach to the Divine and concluding with the Eternal Now. The middle sections included titles like Sanctified Woman, Closer to the Eternal, The Light Beyond, Desert Vision, Midnight Prayers, Mother's Hymn, The Seeker, Spiritual Man, Beyond the Veil, and The Kingdom Within. May 3, 1972, finished final mix of Hires Tonight. One of the last entries about the album reads, "It doesn't sound like anything I've ever done. Colonel will probably hate it, but this isn't for him or even the fans. It's between me and God. Charlie says it's the best thing I've ever done, but Larry says it's more than that. It's the thing I was born to do." And there the Bible entries about the album largely end. But a separate note, tucked into the back pages and dated June 12, 1972, tells the next chapter of the story. Colonel exploded about Hires today, said it would destroy everything we've built. People don't pay to see Elvis the mystic. They pay to see Elvis the entertainer. When I pushed back, he threatened to play it for RCA executives as evidence that I'm losing grip with reality. I've never seen him so angry. Says the religious stuff is fine as long as it's traditional and respectable, but this is the ravings of a spiritual fanatic. I don't know what to do. This music is more important to me than anything I've ever created, but the Colonel controls everything. What happened next is pieced together from the Bible notes and new interviews with Elvis's inner circle conducted after the Bible's discovery. According to these sources, Colonel Parker effectively killed the project, convincing Elvis that releasing such an unconventional spiritual album would damage his career just as he was rebuilding his reputation as a relevant live performer. The Colonel was always focused on Elvis's commercial appeal, explained Elvis historian Alana Nash, author of The Colonel, The Extraordinary Story of Colonel Tom Parker and Elvis Presley. Parker had no problem with Elvis recording traditional gospel albums. They won Grammy Awards and sold to a specific market without interfering with his pop career. But an album mixing Christianity with Eastern philosophy, featuring Elvis in a more prophet-like role than entertainer, That was far too risky for Parker's business model. According to a note dated July 20th, 1972, Elvis ultimately relented to the Colonel's pressure. "I've decided to shelve hire for now. Colonel says we can revisit it when the time is right. But I know what that means. He'll never let it see the light of day. I had the engineer make me a single copy on reel-to-reel. I'm not sure where to keep it where the Colonel won't find it. But I need to preserve what we created." And that's where the story might have ended. Another case of commercial interests overriding artistic expression, if not for the final revelations found in the Bible. A note from December 1976, just months before Elvis's death, revealed what happened to the recordings, moved the higher tapes to the hidden safe in the meditation room. "Had a dream last night that these recordings would be found when the time is right. Maybe not in my lifetime, but they need to be preserved. I pray whoever finds them will understand what they're hearing is my true voice, not the voice of Elvis Presley the entertainer, but Elvis the seeker." Attached to this entry was a small brass key, secured with aging tape, with the cryptic notation mentioned earlier. "The true sound of my soul is safely kept where only God can hear it." The discovery of Elvis's Bible in 2023 set off a search within Graceland for the hidden safe mentioned in the notes. Sure enough, behind a false panel in what had been Elvis's meditation room, researchers found a small wall safe that had been overlooked during the conversion of Graceland into a museum in the early 1980s. Inside were 3 reel-to-reel tapes labeled simply Higher Final Mixes, along with handwritten notes about the recording sessions, and a letter addressed to whoever finds this. The letter, dated January 1977, just months before Elvis's death, reads in part, "These recordings represent the music I was meant to make. In them you'll hear the real me, not the person I've had to become for the world. If you're reading this, it means I'm either gone, or I've finally found the courage to share this work with the world. Either way, I hope these songs bring whoever hears them closer to the eternal spirit that connects us all." The discovery sent shockwaves through the music world. The Elvis Presley estate, in collaboration with RCA Records, announced plans to carefully restore and release the Higher album after more than 50 years in darkness. Music historians and religious scholars were given preview access to the recordings to provide context for this unprecedented discovery. "What we're hearing in these tapes is revolutionary," said gospel music historian Dr. Robert Darden. "It's Elvis Presley creating a kind of spiritual concept album that bridges traditional gospel with something far more mystical and personal. There are elements that remind me of John Coltrane's A Love Supremes in how it uses music as a direct channel for spiritual expression. The recordings, according to those who have heard them, reveal an Elvis few fans would recognize, vocally adventurous, spiritually profound and artistically daring. The voice is unmistakably Elvis, but the approach and material are unlike anything in his official catalog. There's a 12-minute piece called Desert Visions that's absolutely stunning," said Jack Iserson, an audio restoration expert working on the project. "It starts with Elvis reading from what sounds like ancient wisdom texts over a minimal guitar part, then builds into this improvised vocal exploration that's more like something you'd expect from Indian classical music than from the king of rock and roll. His voice achieves these microtones and textures that I didn't think were possible." The question that has dominated discussion of this discovery is, why was Colonel Parker so determined to suppress this material? While the commercial concerns were real, the Bible notes suggest something deeper was at play. "Colonel doesn't understand and doesn't want to understand my spiritual journey," Elvis wrote in October 1972. "He's afraid of anything he can't control, and he can't control my relationship with God. He says fans want the jumpsuit and the karate moves, not Elvis the preacher. But this album isn't preaching. It's testifying to something beyond words." Religious scholars who have studied Elvis's notes and listened to the recovered recordings suggest that the album represented a syncretic spiritual vision that would have been highly controversial in the early 1970s, especially coming from a cultural figure with roots in conservative Christianity. Elvis was exploring a universalist spiritual perspective that embraced elements of Christianity, but also incorporated Eastern philosophy, mysticism, and metaphysical concepts. explained Dr. Sarah Jensen, a professor of religious studies. For a star of his magnitude to publicly embrace such an eclectic spiritual vision in 1972 would have been extremely controversial, potentially alienating his core fan base, while also being dismissed by the counterculture as coming from an establishment figure. The discovery also sheds new light on Elvis's last years. Far from being merely a period of decline and addiction, his private notes reveal a man engaged in a profound spiritual struggle, seeking meaning beyond fame and commercial success. "I've achieved everything the world says should make a man happy," he wrote in 1976. "And yet the only peace I find is in these private moments of connection with something larger than myself. The pills help with the pain in my body, but only my spiritual practice helps with the pain in my soul." Former members of Elvis's inner circle, who have been interviewed since the Bible's discovery, express regret that the world never got to see this side of Elvis while he was alive. "The public image of Vegas Elvis in the jumpsuit is so far from the man I knew," said Larry Geller. "In private, he was constantly reading, questioning, searching. He would stay up all night discussing the nature of reality, the existence of God, the purpose of our lives." The Higher album was his attempt to share that seeking with the world, and it breaks my heart that Colonel Parker killed it. As the tapes undergo careful restoration for eventual release, the discovery has prompted a re-evaluation of Elvis's artistic legacy and spiritual life. Many of his inner circle believe that the suppression of Higher was a turning point that accelerated his disillusionment and decline. After the Colonel shut down the Higher project, something changed in Elvis, recalled Jerry Schilling, one of Elvis's closest friends. "It was like a light went out. He still performed and recorded, but there was a resignation in him, like he'd given up fighting for his deepest self-expression. I've always believed that if he'd been allowed to release that album, to share that side of himself with the world, things might have gone very differently for him." For music historians, the discovery represents a missing piece in understanding Elvis's artistic evolution and the private spiritual journey that ran parallel to his public career. "This is the Elvis album that might have changed everything," reflected Grammy-winning producer Rick Rubin after hearing portions of the restored recordings. "It's visionary work, ahead of its time in 1972 and still powerful today. It makes you wonder what direction his music might have taken if he'd been allowed to follow this path. There are moments on these tapes that stand alongside the most transcendent music ever recorded in any genre." For Elvis fans, the upcoming release of Higher promises a deeper connection with an artist many thought they knew completely. The album reveals the private Elvis, the seeker, the mystic, the man whose spiritual longing was as powerful as his better-known desires and appetites. "My voice was given to me for a purpose beyond entertainment," Elvis wrote in one of the final entries in his Bible. "I hope someday people will hear these songs and understand that Elvis Presley was more than sequin jumpsuits and karate moves. I was a soul searching for God, just like everybody else." Soon, more than 45 years after his death, the world will finally hear the sound of that searching soul. The album Elvis considered his masterpiece, rescued from the shadows by notes hidden in his private Bible. Higher stands poised to add a profound new dimension to the legacy of one of music's most iconic and misunderstood figures. As Elvis himself predicted in his letter found with the tapes, this music was born in the night, kept in darkness for its protection, but meant for the light. When the time is right, it will find its way to those who need to hear it. Music is the voice of the soul, and these songs are the truest voice I've ever found. May they help whoever hears them find their own truth, their own higher ground.